Hey there, guys. Welcome. Um, we are going to be doing the creature of the week. But before we get started on that, there's actually something I want to say. So, on the last creature of the week, I kind of done like a no script kind of deal. However, it kind of threw me off so badly during streams that I decided, nah, I ain't gonna do that no more. So I pretty much decided to go on ahead and type down the whole script for this creatures and future creatures of the week. Also, I pretty much decided to keep it called Creature of the Week because it's just like a good title for them. I'll just kind of release them whenever I can, which includes like finishing up the script and getting the board set up. And speaking of which, on tonight's Creature of the Week, we shall be talking about scribble. Okay, let me put away my wings and my tail, as we shall be talking about the Lindwyrm. This is pretty much a unique dragon that I want to talk about, so let's hop right into it. But before we do, if y'all want to support me and all that, check me out on the TikTok, on the Twitch, on the Twitter, main YouTube channel, Game and React channel. Leave a like, subscribe, follow, notify, and all that kind of stuff. Alrighty, let's get started on this. The Lindwyrm is a kind of serpentine dragon told in Northern and Central European myths and legends. Appearances. The Lindwyrm, or Lindwyrm, is a common kind of dragon toad, and as such they do have somewhat different appearances from region to region. But the Lindwyrm do have a common form of being a giant serpentine-like dragon with no wings on them. Many stories have them with no legs, but other accounts say that they will have at least 2 frontal legs. Their head is always draconic with horns sometimes. They will have 2 sharp fangs, and they have dragon scales running down their serpentine bodies. The underbelly is soft and vulnerable like a snake. Speaking of which, their colors are normally dark like black to brown with a higher color underbelly. They may even have a horse-like mane down their necks and spiny dorsal fins down their backs. These appearances make the Lindwyrm different from your regular dragon. Roles in mythology. Lindwyrms are considered a dangerous kind of dragon to humans. These serpents live out in forest areas, especially places closest to a village or town. There they will reside within caves and underground layers. Many Lindwyrms are predators that will eat any big game animal, but they prefer humans as their main food source. Sorry, tongue twister. They will wait in ambush for a human to pass by. They will then shoot out a milk-like substance that's actually venom designed to blind their victim. Or they will shoot out a poisonous breath, or kind of like a mist or something. Anyways, once they blind a person, they will coil around them to capture them before dragging them back to their lairs to devour the humans. However, they are also known to chase after humans that spot them and flee. They can do this by grabbing their own tails and rolling after them like a wheel. They can also use their wheel movement to escape if danger comes their way. This also grants them the nickname wheel snakes. However, this isn't always the case, as there are some good Lindwyrms. But these Lindwyrms are often those of cursed people, like princes, who are transformed into Lindwyrms but keep their humanoid minds. These kind of curses exist with other cases, like the Princess and the Frog and Beauty and the Beast fairy tales. And no, I ain't referring to the Disney ones. Okay? Disney took a lot of fairy tales and stuff and made their own movies, so I'm not talking about that. Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah. The Lindwyrm is said to lay their eggs under linden trees. Once they hatch, the Lindwyrm quickly grows long and right up to an adult age to be able to be safe from any bigger predators. Like other dragons, Lindwyrms are known to find and hoard treasures in their chambers where they guard it fiercely. But unlike other dragons, they seem to possess a power that allows them to grow whatever they lay underneath. Almost like duplication or creation of treasures from what they have. As such, since they will lay on their treasures, they would have large hordes filling their lairs since they'll just keep multiplying and multiplying it. I can often think that this may cause some adventurers to try to go and steal treasure since there'll be so much, but that's never a good idea. Anyways, they are also known for their venomous breath too, which I already kind of talked about that earlier. So normally the stories of Lindwyrms kind of have them terrorizing the locals, eating people and livestock until a brave hero like a knight or something comes by and slays them, showing them kind of like a nuisance of a dragonoid. Other serpentine dragons. The Lindwyrm fits into the category of serpentine dragons and dragonoids, seeing how they are large serpentine creatures, and as we already discussed before, there are other serpentine dragons that exist in other myths and legends. Even the same legends with the Lindwyrms may tell of other serpent dragons too, with the first one being the Wyvern. We already spoke about the Wyvern, but it's basically a dragon-like creature with 2 legs and 2 wings. Next is a French, and I'm going to butcher this name, Guivre, which is basically similar to a Lindwyrm, except it's got wings and may have small hind legs or none at all. Then there is the Vouivre, another French dragon, but unlike the Guivre, which again, my French people, I am sorry that I mispronounced this. Where was I at? Oh yeah, here it is. But unlike the other one, it's more of a serpent with bat-like wings, got fire constantly on its back, and has a magical jewel in the middle of its forehead. Actually, all 3 of these draconic creatures that I mentioned are viewed as relatives to the Lindwyrm, according to some viewpoints of the Northern and Central Europeans. They actually believe that these 3 are a shot-off version of Lindwyrms over to the western side of Europe. Now, for those similar to Lindwyrms but are not related, is the Wyrm, or the Nordic dragons, a dragon species that I kind of spoke of earlier. They share some traits with the Lindwyrm, but unlike them, it is a 4-legged dragon that lives more in the forest and mountain ranges, kind of away from humans, and they have wings that they use to fly. They can also breathe both poison breath and fire breath as well. Next, we got the Greek Hydra, which is another creature that I've spoken of before. It's basically a multi-headed regenerating serpent. They share some traits with the Lindwyrms, like the regenerative abilities, which I kind of forgot to mention before, but I'll go into that later on. Now, the Basilisk of Greek and medieval mythologies, which is yet another creature that I have talked about before, is a half-chicken, half-serpent creature with death by glare powers, and is considered as many the king of serpents. And lastly, we got the English Knuckers, which is a creature I have not talked about yet. They are serpentine dragons that are very similar to Lindwyrms, but they are a water dragon that lives in rivers, streams, and near rails and watering sources. It's described as kind of like a sea serpent with wings on its back. And let's not mention the other serpentine dragons from other parts of the world, like the Asian dragons, Cuelebre, Herensurges, and other serpents. So yeah, serpentine dragons are very, very common. Powers. Now, dragons are considered one of the most powerful kind of creatures around, and this is no exception to the Lindwyrm either. Lindwyrms as a dragon have dragon physiology, allowing them to attain powers of a typical dragon. Apex predator, magical dragon scales, enhanced senses, supernatural physical powers, and other draconic abilities. However, it is known that they cannot fly due to not having wings, and they cannot breathe fire. But this leads to their secondary powers, poisonous breath. While they cannot breathe fire, they can breathe poisonous and venomous breath and smoke that is just as lethal. They is even capable of eroding the earth around it. And let's not forget about the fact that they can shoot out these milk-like substances that acts as poison too. Let's see, next they have the power to grow rapidly by shedding their skin constantly. They are capable of being young and small to full-grown large adults within a quick time span. They also have a particular skill to swallow or bite its tail to travel at high speeds in a wheel-like hoop, making them kind of similar to the hoop snake, which is a type of fearsome critter. This grants it enhanced speed that can outrun a man. They also got great regenerative abilities. By shedding their skin, they can become lively in vitality. They are also hoarders and guardians of their treasure, just like any other dragon. And finally, they possess a power to grow in number of whatever they lay upon, no matter what it is. This explains why their treasures are always massive and spread out, as they can grow by the creature simply laying on top of it. Oh, that was my phone. My phone was dying. Anyways, these magical powers and draconic abilities make the Lindwyrm a fierce opponent. Weaknesses. However, stories told that Lindwyrms can be slain and defeated by heroes and knights, and this is because of their weaknesses that they have. For one, it's a typical dragon weakness of the underbelly. The underbelly is the only soft and vulnerable spot on any dragon, and the Lindwyrm is no exception. In fact, Fafnir was skinned by this mission? That's a typo. In fact, Fafnir was kind of slain by this weakness, which we'll talk about later on. Up next is the fact that they are not capable of flight or breathing fire. This is the kind of weakness a Lindwyrm have compared to other weaknesses of dragons, and that's thus one might be able to attack them from high places or out of reach, although the poisonous breath is more dangerous really. But the poison can be resisted. In the story of Ragnar Sigurdson, where he faced off against the Lindworm of Thora's hand, he made a special shaggy pants and coat that was boiled in tar, and then he had the tarred pants and coat covered in sand. This made a special armor of sort that repelled the worm's poison and allowed him to get close enough to slay it. With this story, it's so that you can make special clothing that can resist the Lindworm's poison. Another weakness is by breaking the curse of a transformed Lindwyrm. A few Lindwyrms are actually cursed people transformed into one, and there are ways to break those curses, like the curse of Prince Lindwyrm, which I'll speak of later. And of course, decapitation of the head and burning the neck like a Hydra also keeps them dead too. So if you happen to come across one of these serpents, remember these weaknesses and they'll help you out. Differences in region and symbols. Oh, I messed up on the title of that crap. Anyways, Lindwyrms are a kind of creature that are told across Europe. The northern regions of Europe and across the areas of Central Europe have told their own versions of the Lindwyrm and how they behave and act. As such, how different or similar are Lindwyrms based on what regions they are told? Well, let's look into these cultures and see what kind of Lindwyrms are spoken of. So, in the northern European places, like the Swedish, Nordic, and Scandinavia, they told of the Lindwyrm as the typical ones that I mentioned before. Mainly as a limbless kind of sort that could either be man-eaters or cursed individuals. Their legends are complex and hold great significance to their culture, as in the connection to the linden trees, which to the Norse is a sacred tree. Many famous figures, like Fafnir and Prince Lindwyrm, are considered cursed ones that transformed into Lindwyrms. They are also considered kind of guardians of their lairs and treasures, which can be invoked in the curse as well. And lastly, the belief of Lindwyrms are so strong that they are believed to be real animals to humans all the way up to the 19th century. And even historical people like the Swedish folklorist Gunnar Olof Heitin Kafalis offered a reward to any evidence of one. However, it cannot be the same for the Central Europeans. Areas like the Austrian, Germanic, and Swiss regions see the Lindwyrm as a two-legged menace to human societies. Settlements dread the Lindwyrms as vicious man-eaters and devourers of livestock. They often feature stories of heroes and knights slaying these creatures, like the Lindworm of Klagenfurt. These dragons are also linked to natural disasters, and are believed to cause floods. Man, I forgot to mention about that too. Backtrack to the powers. They are also known to cause natural disasters like flooding. There we go. Back to the differences. Where was I at? Oh yeah. As such, they are not seen as creatures of dual nature of beast and intelligence, but as simply man-eating things. But there is another kind of Lindwyrm that can be told, and that is the medieval Christianity and heraldry. Medieval Christians also adopted Lindwyrm, but they portrayed them way more of an evil spectrum than Central Europe. They believe that Lindwyrms are demonic forces of evil, and associated with paganism like any other dragons. It often portrayed in art and literature to be vanquished by those of the Holy Church, like knights and saints using the power of the cross. In symbolism, they are creatures that represent chaos and the wild forces of nature. But they are also the symbol of guardianship and fertility. As such, in the heralds, they are used as a coat of arms of protection and of noble families. Now, it is noted that Lindwyrms and heraldry are shown more as that of a dragon than their actual counterparts. So as you can imagine, Lindwyrms are a widespread creature with many legends across Europe. Lindwyrm Curse. As we have discussed, Lindwyrms are draconic creatures described as large limbless and wingless serpents that eat man out of the woods. But as we also discussed, this isn't always the case. The Lindwyrm is a unique kind of dragon that some of them may not even be dragons at all. Some of them are actually cursed people who are transformed into a Lindwyrm and develop some behaviors as such. This curse is known as the Lindwyrm Curse. The curse is simply put, an individual, whether they are born as one or got caught up in the curse, are transformed into a full-fledged Lindwyrm. Now, while the curse is known across the European myths, only one story actually talks about it in full detail, which is the story of Prince Lindwyrm. According to the legend, the curse seems to affect the newborn of a humanoid, making the newborn born as a Lindwyrm. The legend goes as this. The mother, who was a queen, had no children, so she visited a witch who instructed her to eat one of the two roses that she gave her, a red or a white one. But either because of her being forgetful or became greedy for a child, she ended up consuming both of them. This resulted in the first child being born as a Lindwyrm, while the second twin was born as a perfect human boy. This is the main known method for the Lindwyrm curse to take effect. Of course, there is another one if you include Fafnir, with him getting like greedy, killing like his dad, and taking the treasure, which, but then again, he kind of had a power of transformation, so he kind of transformed himself into the dragon. So who knows whether that's a curse or more of his own magical powers. Anywho, kind of back on track. Whether it be by greed or forgetfulness, seeking the help from a wish to obtain children, and not listening to the instructions of eating one rose could cause the Lindwyrm curse to take effect. So we know how a person can be cursed, but how do you undo the curse? Luckily, the Prince Lindwyrm story also answers that question. When the prince wanted a bride and kept eating princesses who refused to marry it, a shepherd's daughter went to the same witch who instructed her to do, A shepherd's daughter went to the same witch who instructed her on what to do. She visited the prince with 11 or more layers of clothing, and told the prince before she could marry him that he must shed the same number of skins as her clothing. They do so, and he ended up breaking the curse by removing the skins and revealing a handsome prince underneath. Another version stated that the daughter took the clothing and the shed skin, bathed it in milk, and embraced the shed skin for the Lindwyrm to turn back into a human. Either way, it seems to break one's curse is to shed off all of the skin of the Lindwyrm to reveal the human underneath. Though there could be an added step with it, like the bathing of the milk, or even having someone willing to help, whether it be like actual love or just wanting to save their own hide. But whatever the case, we learned about the curse of the Lindwyrm, we know how it's cast, we know how to break it, and we even know how dangerous of a curse it is, seeing how you become an apex predator with an appetite for fellow humans. Ooh, spooky. Ah, my phone! Famous Lindwyrms. Lindwyrms are a very widespread kind of dragon. They are told across many parts of Europe, from the mountain ranges of Scandinavia to even across to Denmark, which I forgot to mention about that too, crap. As such, many stories are told about Lindwyrms, including some of the most famous kind of Lindwyrms, which these individuals might also be other kinds of dragons like the worms as I mentioned way back before, But anywho, let's explore the more famous kind of Lindwyrms around. Now, before I mention these dragons, I do want to mention that these two are mainly considered worms. But they are also viewed as Lindwyrms depending on the beliefs of the culture. So the first of the two is Fafnir the dragon. He was a dwarf and son of the famous dwarf Heriomarr. He was a fine dwarf until his family came into possession of the hoard and the ring of Aphrodite. Due to greed and corruption, he killed his father and transformed himself into a fearsome dragon, where he guarded until he was slain by the hero Sigurd. I might be mispronouncing this, I am so sorry. Next is the infamous Nidhoggr. He is a powerful dragon that lives near Hell, or the Underworld. He continuously chews on the roots of Yggdrasil, the World Tree. Along with Nidhoggrs are also dragons, other dragons, like Grabakr, Grafvolluor, which I'm pronouncing these wrong, and others that gnaw on the roots as well. Now the next ones are actually Lindwyrms in the mythical stories. The first Lindwyrm is a Doros Lindwyrm. According to the legend, a Swedish king gave his daughter, Thora Borgarhjort, however you pronounce this last name, a pet snake. But the snake turns out to be a Lindwyrm, and it rapidly grew to the point that he encircled around Dora's home, guarding both her and the hoard he had. The king offered his daughter's hand in marriage to whoever could slay the beast and free his daughter. Many tried but failed. That was until Ragnar Sigurdson was able to slay it, but he had to first make his own poison-resisting shaggy pants and coat, and then he went to slay the Lindwyrm. He then lived with Dora as a new king. Another famous Lindwyrm is the Klagenfurt Lindwyrm. In this Austrian tale, a Lindwyrm living near Klagenfurt was blamed for the unnatural flooding that was happening. The Duke offered a reward for his capture. It wasn't until his knights came up with a clever plan. They hid near a strong tower and tied a bull to a chain and used it as bait. And when the Lindwyrm came out and ate the bull, it was hooked and captured like a fish. The serpent was then killed and the tower was replaced by a castle. And finally, the most famous Lindwyrm is Prince Lindwyrm. This Lindwyrm was actually a cursed prince. Shit, I just lost one. There it is. It's actually a cursed prince. According to the legend, a childless queen wanted a child and seek help from a witch. The witch gave her 2 roses and instructed her to only eat one, but out of greed or forgetfulness, she consumed both. The first son was a Lindwyrm that slithered away, while the second was a healthy boy. Over time, the second son became a full-grown prince and wanted to get married, but the first son, Prince Lindwyrm, returned, who's now a full-grown Lindwyrm. He told his brother he cannot marry until he finds a bride himself. So the kingdom had princesses to come to marry him, but they rejected him, and they were actually eaten by the prince. Eventually, they started finding regular women, and so a shepherd's daughter was chosen among others. Fearing her death, she sought out the same witch and asked for help. The witch instructed her on what to do next. She showed up to Prince Lindwyrm wearing many clothing. The prince told her to remove the clothing, but she told the prince that he must shed his skin by the number she pulls off of her clothing. They do so, and by the time the daughter removed her last clothing, the prince removed his last shedded worm skin, and broke the curse as he became a handsome human prince. And I kinda assumed that the two got married and lived happily ever after. And that pretty much concludes the most famous Lindwyrms around. Popularity. While Lindwyrms aren't as popular in media as regular dragons, they are still showcased in some movies, TV series, cartoons and anime, games, books, and even lore and franchises like Star Wars, believe it or not. In movies with Fafnir and Nidhoggr, like the 1958 Sigurd, Dark Kingdom, the Dark Kingdom, the Dragon King, and the Range of Fire have them, which are similar to Lindwyrms. Ooh, nice! Don't have to worry about uploading space now, which means I can upload that other video. I'm gonna be sure to do that before I go to bed. Anywho, back to this. In TV series, Mythica had an episode dedicated to the story of Prince Lindwyrm. With cartoons, the show Hilda had a Lindwyrm in episode 7. In anime, while there aren't any Lindwyrm creatures, there are places and characters named after it. In Monster Girl Doctor, there's a city of Lindwyrm. Another city is the city of Lindwyrm, spelled with a U, not an O, from the Imminence of Shadow. There's a character named Lindwyrm von Freyjagar of High School Prodigy Have It Easy Even in Another World. And finally, there's the Gundam Lindwyrm from the series Gundam Build Divers. In games, Monster Legends got Lindwyrm as a cosmic villain. Lindwyrm is a name of Thalden's Lances in Kingdom Heart. Lindwyrm, with a Y, not an O, is the name of a dungeon crawler Steam game. I need to check that out. Lindwyrm, again with a Y, not an O, is a beast enemy of Battle Brothers. And finally, D&D's got their own version of Lindwyrms too. In books, Lindwyrm by Chini Prater got a woman dealing with her husband that's transformed into one. The Lindwyrm by Martin Shaw is a retelling with elements of Prince Lindwyrm. Another retelling is A.A. Freeman's The Midwife and the Lindwyrm. Sanim McGurn in Cryptis got Lindwyrms as a subfamily of giant reptiles. In Star Wars Books of Sith, one of the battleships is actually called Lindwyrm. And yes, this is actually true. And of course, let's not forget about the classical Danish book of the Lindwyrm as well. The Lindwyrm? Prince Lindwyrm. That's what I meant to say. Okay, guys. We are now going to finish this up with the conclusion. The serpentine dragons of Northern and Central Europe have struck fear into the villagers that lives out in the woods. These man-eaters are told far and out, and whether they are regular dragons or cursed princes, these serpentine beasts have many stories of them slain or restored back to humanity. So watch out on the path and don't explore a cave with a large amount of gold, or you'll be chased and poisoned and devoured by the Lindwyrm. And that concludes this creature of the week. So what do you guys think of the Lindwyrm? Do you really think that they're vicious man-eaters? Do you think you might be able to help one out that's cursed? Do you think that you get chased down by it when it rolls down at you like a wheel? Let me know in the comments section whenever this is uploaded on YouTube. And this here is a part where any of you guys that are watching, if you guys have any questions for me, now is a good time as any to tell me. So, I'm going to give y'all like a few. So, ask me any questions that you got about the Lindwyrm. Don't think any of y'all got any questions for it. In that case, we'll go on ahead and end out this class. So, that's pretty much it for our creature of the week. Now, our next creature that we're going to be talking about is actually one that is talked about in Aztec mythology and around the Mexico region, where we're going to be talking about a certain water dweller that is known to drag people in the rivers and kind of take like their teeth, nails, and other stuff, with a hand for a tail. Ooh, this one's very Pacific. Hope you guys know what kind of creature I'm talking about. But anyways, that concludes our creature of the week. But anywho, that's pretty much that. So with all that out of the way, thank you guys for coming on this fantastic creature of the week stream. I hope y'all had as much fun as I did, as we got to talk about the Lindwyrm and their serpentine man-eating curse ways. And if you wish to see more streams like these, check me out on my TikTok, on my Twitch, on the Twitter, main YouTube channel, and the Gaming React channel, and leave a like, subscribe, follow, notify, and all that kind of stuff. And with that, I bid this show adieu. So see you guys. So long. Bye bye. Okay, bye.